guys, I'm Kirsten, the Problem Solving Teacher and Teachers Pay Teachers author. If you like my videos, please remember to like and subscribe, hit the notification bell, and leave a comment below. When you do things like that, it helps other teachers find me, and it also lets you know when I'm coming out with new material. All right, today we are going to be talking about the 11 books that I read in quarter one. So I have 11 spectacular books for you, and I'm gonna tell you about each book, what I thought of it, give you a little bit of a rundown of it. If you want the list of books, make sure that you head over to my blog. You can check out my show notes in the show notes portion of my blog, and click the link to find the books really easily. Okay, so the first book I read in 2022, I probably say 2021 half the time too, in 2022 was Year of Yes by Shonda Rhimes. So when I started to read this book, I didn't know who Shonda was before. And so Shonda Rhimes, she writes TV shows. She writes Grey's Anatomy, she writes oh, what are the other ones? So she writes all sorts of crazy TV shows. I wish I could remember all the names of them right now. The only one I can remember off the top of my head is Grey's Anatomy, but she writes all of those TV shows, and they are the ones that I personally like. They're great. They're like amazing. So this book was a fantastic analysis of her own life. She is one of the most successful writers for TV. Like, she has her own night on TV because people just want her stories that much. And but she did not want any attention of any kind. She was a writer, not an actor. She said no to everything. She turned down TV interviews, red carpet parties, writing panels. If she could say no, she would say no. Then one day, President Obama and the White House invited her to the White House, and they told her that she was going. They did not say, you can come. They said, you are going. And so she was like, I have to go. She had no choice but to go. And she ended up having a lot of fun. And she challenged herself to start saying yes to different opportunities that came her way, because a lot of them were. And between what happened at going to that party and what her sister said, like, you say no to everything. You have all these opportunities and you just say no. Between those two things, she challenged herself to say yes. And she started saying yes to opportunities in life, like interviews, even though she didn't like them. And she had fun. She learned new things. She grew. She started to, she learned how to say yes to her kids always. If her kids want to play, she's like, yes, of course, I'm always going to play with you. I'm not going to just walk out the door. And rather than like trying to hustle and bustle and finish her busy life. And she just said yes, and she grew. She said yes to losing weight and getting healthy and taking care of herself, and it transformed her life, because rather than watch from the sidelines, she was living. So it's more of an autobiography, but she also talks about she talks to the reader and about like the lessons she's learned and like the things that we can do. So it's an inspirational book as well as the story of what she went through. Okay, the second book that I read was Happiest Children in the World. So this was a parenting book about the difference between Dutch and American and or British parenting. So clearly we live in different countries. We're going to be part of different cultures. But studies have shown that children in the Netherlands are benefiting, that they are happier than children in the United States or in Britain. So it kind of talks about like some of the differences in the culture and what we can do to foster happy, responsible kids. That's right, responsible kids who can be independent. These children in the Netherlands, they play outside in all weather with little supervision. Like, they can go outside on their own. They are responsible for getting themselves to various places like school and practices. Granted, they do have most like bike paths that the kids can ride everywhere, so they can do that easily. And they are given real responsibilities. So this book is just about like I'm not going to incorporate everything from Dutch life into my parenting, but it did give me some ideas about how to give my child and my students, once I'm able to go back to the classroom, more responsibility, more independence, and just help them be happier because they are in more control like that. Okay, the third book I read was Grammar Girl. So Grammar Girl was a book about grammar. Shocking, right? I've been trying to read some writing books. So Grammar Girl is about grammar. It includes tips and tricks about grammar and usage to make us better writers. Now, this wasn't your average guidebook. What I loved about this guidebook for teachers is that it is written in a friendly way. She also doesn't always give the exact answer. She tells you, well, this is what this says, this is what this says, this is what I do, this is what's common use. And she kind of explains like the confusion around certain rules and how to make the best decision. So like, I love this book because a teacher could look it up right before they teach something in grammar, and they could look and they could say, oh, I was about to teach this and now I have a really good idea of what I'm going to do and how I'm going to explain it. So it gives some good tips and tricks for teachers. All right, the next book I read Barefoot Imbalanced. So this book is about sensory processing disorder and how it has become a huge issue in schools and across the country. More and more we are seeing kids that have strange behaviors because they are looking for the correct sensory input. It can be at like, there are kids who will like have to touch every single locker all the time because they need to feel the bumps on the wall. They like don't know how close they are to a classmate because their proprioception isn't developed correctly. Kids just, their sensory systems are off balance. And so this book is all about how we can help incorporate more sensory into our students and children's lives. So one of the things that our students need for their sensory system is input from an early age, which a lot of kids don't get. They're putting carriers and devices to hold them, and so they're not getting sensory input enough. But by the time kids get to school, that's too late. My son has sensory issues, and I tried not to put him in devices on purpose, but still he has sensory things. So nature is a great way to do this because the sensory input is natural and gentle. It's not overwhelming, it's not harsh like the rest of the world. And like my own son, like he thrives better when we are outside. Like when we're on a play date inside with a friend, he struggles because it's just more. But if we're outside with a friend, or if we start outside, he does much better. So there are ideas on how to put more sensory and nature into the classroom, as well as just for your own children. So it's a great book for parents or for teachers. The next book I read was On Writing by Stephen King. Now, let me tell you, I am not a fan of Stephen King. I have never actually read any of his books. I've seen some of his movies, probably more by accident than anything, because I am not a scary movie genre kind of person. But I figured when I was looking for books on writing to read, and I figured, hey, Stephen King has sold a lot of books, and if he's written a book on how he wrote, then he must have something good to say because he's Stephen King, and even if you're not a fan of his, you know who he is. So the truth is, after reading this book, I think I would really like his writing if it was a different genre, because I'm not a scary book kind of person. But this book wasn't scary. It was all about writing, and it was fantastic. So in this book, he told the story of how he became a writer, the biggest lessons that he learned. And he goes all the way from like his early childhood up through, I think he wrote it in like 2000 or something. So he covers a lot of time of his life, and he just pulls out the bits and pieces that he thinks are the most prominent to how he became a writer. So the biggest lesson for teachers that stood out to me was that he said, what a teacher says can impact you for years. So never tell a kid that they're wasting their time on any kind of writing, because teachers told him that he was wasting his time on writing. And he's Stephen King. He's like one of the most popular writers in America. And teachers literally tried to shut down his writing, which I think is crazy. So never tell a kid they're wasting their time if they're writing anything. If they're writing anything of any kind, it's amazing. You never know who your next Stephen King is going to be. He could be in your class. He also told about his writing process, which differs from the traditional writing process that we teach in some ways. And I think I think his writing process makes a lot of sense. He also gave some advice about what to include for your writer's toolbox. A lot of those are just like the things that you would think to include, like grammar and vocabulary. But he talks about those tools in a way that makes you think about them more closely, and you're like, yeah, I want my students to think about how to use their vocabulary like he does. So even if you're just like looking for a new inspiration for how to teach some of those things that you want them to use in their writing, it's a great read for that too. Okay, the next book I read was Oh Crap, Potty Training. I know that, okay, and this is by Jamie Golacki. If you are not in early childhood or a parent, then maybe this book isn't for you, because this book is definitely in the parenting category, but I read it this month and I wanted to tell you about it because if you haven't read it, it's a great book for people who are on their way to potty training. I was terrified to potty train my son because I had no idea what I was doing or how to do it. Jamie answers all of the questions about, you know, is this mean? Is it too harsh? Is it too soon? Is it too late? When to do it? How to do it? She answers all of those questions and just tells you a plan to follow and how to get it done. After reading just the first few chapters, like I started it on like a Wednesday, I read it a Thursday. I was like, husband, I think we should start potty training this Saturday. And he was like, okay, are you sure? I was like, yes, we should do it. It's a long weekend. We'll have 3 days. And then of course it will continue after that. But I was like, well, 3 days where we can do it teamwork. So we started, I read one more day and then we started potty training. And my son is now potty trained. So if you are in early childhood and you work with kids in diapers, then it could be helpful for when you're talking to parents who are going for the same thing, or even if you just want to recommend to parents, hey, read this book, it will help. It could also help you be able to support parents and answer questions that they might have. Okay, the next book I read, well, it actually wasn't a book. It was a writer's workshop that was recorded. So it was called To Write is to Know by Gabrielle Rico. So I came across this recorded writing workshop that the library had available. And I've just been trying to read some more books about writing because that is my niche. And so I was like, hey, I'll listen to it. So it walks adults through a whole bunch of writing exercises to help them brainstorm ideas that they can, so that they can become better writers and so that they can leave the workshop with like a bunch of starters that they can then expand when they leave. The goal, yeah, that so this was like a super fast listen. It did a lot of just like, when you think about like writing exercises for your struggling writers, writing exercises that keep it simple, you could totally do what she does with these adults with your students. Because sometimes it's just like giving a feeling or a word and then just letting yourself like web off of that. And it's something that we do with our students, but I thought it was so helpful to see a professional do the same exercises with adults, and to see how that panned out and how we can mimic that in our classrooms. And like I said, I think it took me 2 days to listen to this book. So it was super fast. So definitely if you're like looking for inspiration, especially if you're in the upper elementary or middle school, this is a great thing to do, even high school. Okay, the next book I read was Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. I will tell you that I have never disliked an audiobook narrator as much as I like this one. He was like monotone and boring, like even though I listened to it on double speed, it was still super slow in parts, and it was hard to listen to, but I had heard this book recommended so many times that I forced myself past the part where I didn't like how he narrated to listen to the information. So the book itself was really good. It uses case studies to explain the theory of how our mindset can impact our wallets. It's not saying that it won't be hard work, but if we believe we can create a business we want and we are determined and persistent, then we will. So one of the stories that he talks about in there that I really liked is there was a miner, somebody who went he went out to California and was mining for gold, and they found a small patch, and then they invested. They got their whole family to invest a whole bunch more money, and they were digging and they were mining and they were trying to find this gold, and they like lost it. Like the gold went away for a little bit, but they kept going for a little while, and then they were like, oh, this just isn't working, and they quit. And they sold off their equipment to somebody, and they sold the land to somebody super cheap, and then that person found gold 3 feet later. And so like the person, they just quit 3 feet too soon. So it's 3 feet from gold. So it talks a lot about the importance of determination and persistence in business, because if you quit, then you might miss out on the gold. So just make sure that you check your mindset and remember that you can do it. Okay, the next book I read was Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. So habits make us who we are. We purposely instill some habits, and then we fall into other habits. It's super easy to fall into habits and just get used to things. This book is a mix of talking about habits and mindset. So it talks a little bit about habits. I've read other books that are way more about habits. This book talks about them a little bit. It mostly talks about mindset. So some of what the author talks about is like a little bit out there. Like you might be like, that seems a little bit crazy. Like, what are you talking about? But then when I think about like other things that I've learned, if I open my mind and I think about some of the other things that I've read and other things I've learned throughout my life, not just in the recent months and years of reading, I can see where it lines up with some of those things. He just talks about it in a way that's just like a step more out there than other people. So just keep an open mind as you read it. The next book I read was The Fast Metabolism Diet. Okay, so along with personal growth and just learning and growing, one of that is obviously our health. And so I decided that I really wanted to do something for my health, because since I had a kid, I've fallen into a lot of unhealthy habits, and because I have a kid and I'm tired and I'm doing so many things, I do not have the motivation and determination on my own to make the big change that I needed to make. So I did a search and I found the book called The Fast Metabolism Diet, and I was like, hey, this one's available right now. I'll read this one out of the hundreds of health books out there. And so I did, and plus it gave me something different to read. So this book is all about fixing your metabolism, your hormones, and your body through a specific eating plan. So it's a 28-day commitment, and you must eat 5 times a day. So if you're like, ooh, yeah, I don't do that, they don't let me eat, you must eat at least 5 times a day. And my husband and I, as I'm recording this, we are a little bit over a week in, and I will tell you that following this plan, I feel better. And it's also nice to know that there's an end to it, because at the end of 28 days, you can kind of let loose, because your body is supposed to know how to work better once you're done with it. So I'll tell you more about it after the full time, if you guys are interested in hearing about the whole experience. Okay, and the last book I read during Q1 that I'll be finishing in Q2 is Quench. So Quench is a book all about how to stay hydrated better. We are often dehydrated. We are guzzling water in the classrooms. We are talking so much and doing so much that we are just dehydrated. And this book is all about how to hydrate yourself better so that you feel better. I might mention this book again next quarter, because it's kind of jumping the bridge between quarters. But those are the 11 books that I read for the first quarter of 2022. Let me know if you love any of them, hate any of them, which ones you've read, if you have any book recommendations for me, because I'm always looking for more ideas of what I can read. And don't forget to like and subscribe, hit the notification bell, and have an awesome day.